Back to another exciting edition of Two Men in Black and White, an honest conversation. All right, so much happening out there today, including the anticipated cancellation of about 10% of all flights tomorrow. That's the big headline today. We're also waiting for a decision on tariffs from the Supreme Court that's in Donald Trump's pocket. They did everything they could during oral arguments to, make it fit Trump's argument, but it was like trying to put the round peg in the square hole. Neil Katyal was absolutely brilliant dismantling their argument. I hate that guy with the scruffy voice who said that, SEAL Team 6 could shoot a presidential foe. He was out there arguing again in SCOTUS yesterday. Anyway, Brock Cadellis joins me now live from the beautiful confines of the Hudson River Valley, just north of New York City. All right, Brock, let's get into it. So much going on. A lot of people seeing which way the wind is blowing. Right now, it's not blowing in favor of the airline industry. I don't care what anybody says, when you cut 10%, which is about 4,500 flights per day, people are losing money, big time. And the ripple effect is huge.
Well, it's 10% of the revenues, right?
Yep.
Right? 8 to
Yep.
12%, depending on the flights that are getting canceled. So, which business is set up to just operate with 10% less revenues?
Yep.
It's just, it's just going to
Not the
feed
one
into
I know.
losses. Maybe some lost jobs along the way. Not that corporations aren't shedding enough jobs. This may be more.
Ugh.
But Mark, the trickle down effect works its way through. It works its way through to the hotel industry, the car
Yep.
services, all the pickups, the Uber
Yep.
drivers, all kind limo drivers, all kinds of businesses up and down the chain where the dollars don't circulate and flow through to when people, don't leave their homes.
Right.
It's a
Right.
big part of the economy.
Which lets you know how out of touch Kanks McTaco Tits is. He doesn't understand how this stuff works. And nobody on the Republican side of the ledger is willing to stand up and say, hey, you fool, look at what's happening to our economy. Look at what's happening to our American citizens. You know why? Because he doesn't give a shit. All he's doing is looking at his bank account and checking it to see how much it's grown by each day. Because it's grown by, his net worth has grown 40% since he was sworn in back in January. We're not 10 months into this bullshit. We're 10 months approaching. Just finished 10 months, right? I mean, it's insane the way this guy is looting the treasury, looting America, and stepping on everybody in his goddamn way.
Well, you may have seen the statistic that layoffs in October were the highest since the pandemic. So,
Yep.
we're not
Yep.
reporting economic data right now. So, no one's
Right.
seeing, what these different, statistics are in
Right.
terms of unemployment and the like. Um, but just like we talked about with the food stamps and how the circulation of those dollars, when they're not handed out, crimps, local economies. That's, probably a lot of rural economies, but a lot of urban economies are going to get crushed, and Florida and other tourist destinations in the US are going to get crushed by less people traveling to them, right? It's
Right.
Broadway shows, it's ball games, it's concerts, it's all the, local attractions, it's Disney World, it's Disneyland, it's,
Yep.
all that
Yep.
stuff. Just less people. If they don't move, you know how it is. When you stay at home, you spend less money.
Yep.
It's just the way it is. Whatever you make something at home, like you watch something on TV, you watch a
Yep.
movie, versus you go visit your family, you're going to dinner, you're bringing gifts with you, you're out and about so much more when you're on the road. You're just
Hey,
circulating the
and Brock,
dollars through.
yeah, and that's before the blackout that's being called for, right? At the end of November, right? So think about that. um, and it's not just for African Americans. It is for the entire population. We are calling on everyone. Indivisible is calling on everyone. Don't show up for work on that Monday. Don't put any dollars in the system. Don't buy anything, right? Plan ahead. Do your Thanksgiving shopping early, right? I know if you run out of eggs, bread and milk, you got to run out. Or if we should, God forbid, we get a flurry of snow, everybody's going to buy all the eggs, milk, and bread. But we have got to hit these people where it hurts. These billionaires, because Brock, you can't tell me this unintended consequence of the shutdown is not also political gamesmanship.
Of course it is. But these messages are heard. They get heard. You may have seen that Sinclair's numbers were terrible for the third quarter.
I love it.
Right? Advertising that,
Love it.
they got spanked for that Kimmel bullshit, right?
Yeah.
And now their sales reps need to be banging the phones and doing, door to door to businesses trying to get that advertising money back. Right? It's so much harder to get shit back than to have it and keep it. Just like Disney losing the subscriptions, right? Now you have to go get new subscribers. Like that's a pain in the ass versus just collecting those monthly checks. So all these efforts, they get heard and they shake people at least a little bit. At least a little bit. That's why I'm interested to see what Tesla shareholders do with Musk because he's fucking hurt. He degraded the brand and hurt the value of the company, and he's asking for $1 trillion payout. It's like, why would he get paid? It's like a baseball player batting .220 and then coming back to the negotiating table and saying, well, I need to be paid like, Aaron Judge. It's like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, you had a horrible year. You're asking for a huge raise. So, we got to follow through. We voted, we marched, we voted. Now we got to do the blackout. And we have to keep finding places where we can make noise and send messages.
Yeah, absolutely. And, again, talking about the political gamesmanship, this couldn't come at a worse time for the airline industry, right? We've got one of the busiest travel days of the year, just weeks away. And you got the Frontier CEO saying, why don't you, if you're going to travel, buy a backup ticket on another airline? What the fuck? Like, first of all, it's hard enough to buy one plane ticket with the prices you guys get going.
And bring a second suitcase full of clothes in case we lose your luggage, right? Like, what kind of fucking message is that? Like, it's so fucking absurd.
Such a joke. And these are supposed to be serious people, but these are the people that are running the companies they're also deciding people's fate and people's livelihoods, right? And casting people out in the wind, right? You think there's not going to be layoffs at UPS after somebody didn't put that engine on properly, right? I listened to one of the commentators yesterday talking about how if you use the wrong tools to put an engine back on, it's not going to work. Right. And so, people rushing, people trying to get things done. Like, I'm not saying this is what happened. And it is awful what has happened in Louisville with all those losses of lives. But who's going to pay the price? The workers at UPS. Right. Because somebody's going to have to get laid off, or seasonal hiring is not going to happen like it normally does.
Down. Yep.
Right. So, these are the things, no wonder we have, a miserable quality of life index compared to the rest of the world, because the people that are in charge are grinding us, down to the bone. We work longer for less than our parents did.
Yeah, Mark, it's funny you went that direction because I was just about to say these are like all the little building blocks of an American decline. Right?
Yes.
Just one thing after the other. Like, this is just an America getting worse. But if we talk about it in white and black, which we like to do here, as you said at the top, this is where white America is going to get inconvenienced and pissed off, right? Because who does more air travel? Clearly, it's more affluent people do more air travel, right? Who does more bus travel? Less affluent people ride the Greyhound, right?
Yes.
More affluent people are flying United, right? That's how it works. And
Yep.
knowing the economic inequalities in America, that means white people are doing much more of the flying. I think if you just walk into an airport and look around the room, you can quickly make an assessment of who's doing the flying, right?
Yep.
A lot of white faces. And
Yep.
God, the media loves to send out a correspondent to the airport and do interviews with
Hmm.
people who are pissed off or had to sleep overnight because their flight got canceled. Because just think about it, a little bit of bad. We're already cutting flights. They're going to be jammed to the hilt because the
Oh,
airlines are going to try to make their money. So there's not going
oh,
to be a seat to be found anywhere. So you get just the slightest delay, and we're going to have people all over the place sleeping on the floors and
yes.
all those stories media loves to show about inconvenienced white people come the holidays.
Yep.
But it's inevitable. It could get worse because more air traffic controllers may quit because they're so overworked and burnt out because they're
Well,
so
they're
understaffed.
overworked, they're overworked, burnt out, and the president of the Air Traffic Controllers Union was saying that they feel hopeless. I I don't know about you, bro, but I don't want anybody feeling hopeless when they got my life in their hands and I'm trying to land me on a jumbo jet at the busiest airport in the world and here in Atlanta, Georgia. And the funny thing, Brock, they're going to go ahead and go after the 40 busiest airports in America, right? The super airports, New York, Boston, Atlanta, LA, right? Chicago, Dallas, right? The big airline hubs, right? 4,500 flights from those cities. Are you kidding me? Right? Like, what's going to happen, in the world of commerce? What's going to happen in the world of finance and all these people that have to, how you said
Prices are good. I
how
mean,
the
obviously,
business.
here comes more inflation, right? Prices are
Yes.
going to go up.
Yes.
That's the first thing that'll happen because these airline companies are going to have to figure out how are we going to try to recapture some of these revenues.
Right.
And now they'll have a scarcity of seats, so they're going to be like, well, we got to bump our prices up. So if you haven't bought
Yeah.
your ticket yet, it's going to be more expensive.
Well, they're going to bump up the prices and then oversell that too, right? Because they're going to cut flights, right? Because they'll cut people are expendable, right? So they can cut. They keep planes on the ground. They don't have to, pay for maintenance. They don't have to pay for fuel. Don't have to pay for a crew. So people are expendable, and that's the first way they go to save money. And then they inconvenience,
Mhm.
everybody trying to travel, except for affluent white America who's got miles and points and who sit up front in the big chairs. A lot of white folks up in the front of the plane.
Yeah. Yeah. And a
But
lot in the back. They're gonna be everywhere too. Like people be fighting
yeah,
for those middle seats, right? So they don't get
oh
bumped
yeah,
and miss the day with their family. But yeah, that's just another place where the economy, feels like, is just gonna take a hit.
yep.
And these things are stacking on top of each other, and that's what a recession looks like.
And
And
Brock, uh, how can we not be in a recession? What is it? 2 quarters of negative growth?
yeah,
I mean,
negative, yeah, GDP growth.
yeah, like I mean, how can we not be in a recession? Just because you don't tell us we're in a recession doesn't mean we're not. And I don't care what the stock market says, right? Because there's so few people playing the stock market, and most Americans that are in the stock market are in it because of their 401k.
Yeah,
They're
and,
not
and so much of
trading
that is a
stock.
bet right now on some things that aren't bringing revenues in. Like AI is not really generating that many revenues, but that's
Right.
the big bet in the markets, and that's where so much of the investment dollars is flowing, and that's what pushing. That's why some pundits are worried about a bubble.
Right.
So yeah, you can't look at that. I mean, I can't imagine Q3 there was any growth.
Yeah.
Why would there be all these layoffs?
Right.
Like none of it, and we know, and we can just these anecdotal stories just stack on top of each other. Like
Yep.
it sounds and feels like recession, you know.
Yep. Yep.
So
So where
that's
do we go
why
from
we
here?
won't see data, and even when we do, it'll be manipulated. Trump didn't want legitimate numbers out there. The
No. Hell no.
society didn't react well to them.
And
The
Brock, and here's another one of those deals where, you know, we thought that was cut. I remember 9/11, right? I thought we had, all kind of air defense systems around the country where that couldn't happen, right? I thought we had some system in place where, January 6th couldn't happen. We don't, right? We didn't on 9/11. We don't we weren't covered on J6. We're not being told what the true economic data is. I thought we had that covered. I thought as a government official, you weren't allowed to play fast and loose with the numbers. You weren't allowed to cook the books like they did down at Enron. Like, how do we have all these handshake agreements running our government? Yeah, we'll take care. We'll tell the people what they need. Fuck no, you ought to be mandated by law to tell us exactly what's going on.
Those who have oversight either got fired, and that's where Congress and the separation of powers is supposed to kick in.
Exactly.
And Congress has kind of abdicated their power. And so, that's what autocracy looks like, right? Do you trust the numbers that come out of China or Russia? No. How can you trust them? Why would you trust any economic numbers that come out of either of those countries?
Right.
What would make you have any faith in them? And we've moved in that direction. We're there, basically. I don't believe any economic data I see.
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen any in a while, but I won't believe the next.
Is there
the
even
next
a
piece of
person
data.
in that position? I mean, is there even anybody doing that job? That's the question we should be asking. That's the question Congress should be asking.
Well, there's someone in the seat. Whether you can trust the person in the seat, though, there's a MAGA person in the seat. So is there loyalty to the American people, or is there loyalty to the Trump regime? It's probably to the Trump regime.
Right. And that in turn gets us nothing. Absolutely nothing. That in a bag of donuts.
Yeah, that's part of the problem. But hey, like as you said, the wind is blowing, and there's a lot of people that are figuring out what's going on. Elections have consequences. They resound loudly. I think some decisions were made ahead of the election.
Sure.
And then others were either reinforced or, solidified based on the election results. I don't think Nancy Pelosi decided that she was not going to run again, yesterday morning. I think she had decided months ago, but didn't want to interfere with the election process. But no doubt she saw the wind blowing in a direction that wasn't hers anymore. So I applaud her decision to step aside and let someone younger step in, and maybe someone more progressive. I think she also saw not only, did she see a lot of her compatriots hang on too long, but I think she's seeing that being in the center is not where the electorate is. So the question is whether there'll be more dominoes to fall behind her on the Democratic side of the ledger. The congressman in Maine already said he was a centrist, already said he's not running again. So that'll be an open Democratic primary. How many Democrats who are in the middle, Chuck Schumer types, are feeling like they're absolutely on the wrong side of their own party right now? Him not only not endorsing Mondani, but not even telling us who he voted for, which tells me he didn't vote for Mondani, because if he did,
he'd be happy to say it, right? He went down the Cuomo road. He couldn't say that. He couldn't say that he voted for Cuomo because Cuomo was out here parroting Donald Trump. So, again, Brock, you're trying to play both sides against the middle. When you look, everything Trump touches dies. Okay? Why do you want to align yourself with the bullshit? Right? Remember my senior year in high school, when we were on that great run, that 10-win streak, and we would just come down the court and say, "You're bullshitting." You're bullshitting us. You can't play both sides against the middle and talk to us like, we don't understand what's going on. We hear, we see, we can figure things out. A lot of us are doing the reading. A lot of us are on the Google machine, which is free, which is still free. That may change soon, right? But it's still free. So you can Google the information if you really want it. If you really want facts, you can Google the information and get it.
It's easy to know. It's easy to know what's going on, but it's also really, really obvious because there's such a black and white pardon the pun for our a podcast here. You know, there is so really no middle ground on most issues. You know,
Right.
they're very stark and extreme differences between the parties and even within the parties on some issues. And
Right.
you got to be out there and plant your flag. And for someone like Schumer, you know, I think it's a little bit of an, I mean, I think it's just an embarrassment for him in the end to not have
Oh,
supported the person in his own party from his own home city and then to have lost. And then what, wakes up the next day and he thinks that his stature and standing in the party is the same. To me, it's diminished. It's
yes.
gone. He should have stepped up and he maybe not resigned his seat, but resigned his leadership position and said
Yes.
clearly, I'm not the person to lead this party at this time. So he's the
Right.
only one that's not seeing where the wind's blowing, right? Ted Cruz is seeing it. He's out worried that it's going to be, I think he said he's concerned about a bloodbath
Right.
next
Right.
November, right?
Right.
A lot
And
of
he's
people on the MAGA side of the ledger are really concerned and
absolutely
picking either we need to distance ourselves from Trump because he's an anchor, or we need to, like Chip Roy say, we got to double down and line up even tighter behind Trump because these are the policies that, you know, really he's got the message that really works for us. So they're going to have their battle over there for the next year of trying to figure out stick with or run away from Trump.
right.
Obviously,
And obviously that conversation is not happening right now. Marjorie Taylor Greene was on CNN again trying to sound like a normal human being, had the nerve to call herself a serious person. Why they even interview her like she's a normal human being is beyond me. She should be handled with all kind of antagonistic approach, an antagonistic approach at best. Um, and she should be forced to defend all of her actions every time someone puts a mic in front of her. But she was saying that they're not even meeting, they're not talking, they're not doing, as you mentioned yesterday, they're not doing town halls, they're nowhere to be found, right? So, you know, they're not even planning for the future because they don't know what the future looks like. But they do know this: the only way for them to win elections is to cheat. And that's what's going to be on their on their radar and on their agenda. How can we get the Doji Bros in there again and the Muskrats, you know, to pull off another insane type victory like they did? Can I just go back for a second and revisit history in Pennsylvania? 800,000 doors the Kamala campaign knocked on. Kamala knocked on some of them herself. They never saw any ground game from the Trump campaign. And they lost? That was the week leading up to the election. 800,000 doors they knocked on. Never saw a ground game from Trump. And they lost all the swing states.
yeah.
It
Look,
doesn't make sense.
the bullshit is going on right now. You know, in Texas, there's an open congressional seat. Like Mark Green, is that Al Green? Mark Green, who passed
Green.
away in Houston.
Yep.
So they had the election 2 days ago, and you know no one won a majority, so they have to have a runoff.
Uh-huh.
They haven't even announced the runoff date, so now that's going to be pushed all the way into 2026. But Abbott, he hasn't announced a date. He controls the date. He's just going to let that clock run out, and that seat's going to just remain unfilled. This
Right.
guy died in like March or April. So
Yeah.
they didn't have
Oh,
a
yeah.
special
Al Green
election. They
began
went
with
all the way around to November. Now that goes to a runoff, it's going to probably be a year, you know, maybe even more before the seat gets filled. That's the
Right.
fucking bullshit. That's speaking of votes in Congress that would vote for the Epstein files. That's another lost one, right? As we play this game for why the Arizona
Yeah.
congressional winner hasn't been sworn in
Right.
yet, right? Like,
And
yeah,
again,
MAGA's going to play every game they can.
yep. Yep. And again, Chuckles is silent on it. Hakeem's got so much to harp on. I mean, you know, he needs to pick something
But he
every
should be
day.
doing it. He should be out there every day, like Mike
Every
Johnson's
day.
out there lying every day. Hakeem should be
Yep.
out there every single day. You
Yep.
know, counter punching.
Yep. And that's the bottom line, bro. There should be a narrative that is set. this shutdown and this inconvenience at the airport and for the holidays. Look, it's not going to be just white folks traveling on the holidays. There are a lot of people trying to get over the river and through the woods. Okay, so it's going to hurt American families, those that are able to, get on a plane and go see grandma or go see their parents, you know, because Brock, you think we're going to hear the stories anymore from legacy media about people's flights who were canceled and then they lost a loved one on the other end that they weren't able to see? We used to do those stories in legacy media. We're not going to do them anymore. You know why? Because it makes Trump look like shit.
There. Yeah.
It makes Duffy look like shit. So we're not going to hear those stories because legacy media is part of the problem here.
Hey, Mark, we got one of many problems, right, to deal with. But it's a real easy message for Jeffries every day, right? Because it's like, oh, we're going to have less airline flights because they want to raise your healthcare costs. Oh, we're not feeding hungry children because they want to push through a program that raises your healthcare costs. Go look in the mail. Go look what your premiums are going to be next year. They don't want the subsidies. So they're fighting to cut the subsidies. So they're cutting your food. They're cutting your airline flights, and this is what they're fighting for. They're fighting for you to have to pay more for healthcare. It's such a fucking easy message. He should be out on it every day. And then he could just sprinkle in, and they're hiding from the disclosure of the Epstein files. Like that sits behind it. So they'll do anything. They'll try any trick in the book to keep the Epstein files from being disclosed. And why might that be?
Think about all the names that are on there. We know the guy that wrote the check to fund the military. We know he's on there. So whose army is it? Is it his? Is it Trump's? Is it both of theirs? Right? It's not ours because we're not paying for it. So it's not an army for the people, of the people. It's an army that's been bought and paid for by one soul, right? And that is ridiculous. And I don't know how far $130 million goes anyway when it comes to funding the military, because what do we have? Over 1 million active duty
it's about,
military members.
Yeah.
So, that can't go that far, 130 million bucks. You're talking about running the facilities and the plants and all that stuff. So the weaponry, right? Ammunition ain't cheap. I guess target practice is canceled. I guess we're not running live drills anymore. Brock, no wonder there's so many videos on YouTube about people hauling ass from America and becoming expats in other countries. Packing up and going north, south, east, and west. People are going to Asia. People are going to Central America, South America. Their countries are paying Americans to come on down. People are looking for respite. People want a break. 2 weeks vacation, Brock. I was talking to a friend of mine. He's got a friend that lives in Germany. She had a 5-week vacation, and that was just one of her vacations for the year. The 4-day work week in Europe is not something that's mocked. It's only mocked here.
Because of our comments yesterday on minimum wage, I was debating that on our chat board today, and I'm just kind of amazed at how good the GOP messaging has been on convincing America that if workers got paid more, the country would go to hell in a handbasket. Oh my God, prices would go out of control. Companies can't be raising wages, and people, labor can't be making more money. I'm like, they fucking propagandize this topic that the only reason we have affluence and are a great economy is because our workers get paid so shitty and have shitty benefits, like you mentioned, and less time off and all those things. Like, that's been built into the white side of the ledger's DNA about American capitalism, that's the way it has to be for it to operate effectively. It's just
Right.
amazing that people have just like been sold that bill of goods. It's just a total crock
And
of
buy
shit.
into it. And will argue till they're blue in the face with you about it. How it makes no sense. But a living wage in every other country somehow seems to make sense. Somehow the people are happier. Somehow people are living longer. Somehow people
Yeah.
can elect, women to do the job, to lead the country. Somehow people can stay healthy,
Yeah,
right?
they live
Not
healthier,
here.
longer lives. The ultimate scorecard, right?
Yep.
Healthier, longer lives, right there. So
Yep.
yeah, it's
Not
it's been
here.
an amazing messaging, but I do think that there are cracks. There's cracks in the messaging, and there's
Cracks
like
in
little by little. Maybe it's a
cracks in
glacial
the
pace where there's the counter story is starting to work its way into people's minds, whether it be farmers and rural America, and in essence, the majority of Americans who are workers.
right,
Why they argued against their own well-being, we know racism's been a part of it, but
right.
you know, it's starting to impact, white America so much that they're at least some of them are starting to question um, sort of the shit they've been, spoon fed
And
the
they,
whole lot.
yeah,
Yeah, they've been fed the
yeah.
whole
We're
lot.
starting to wonder, hey, maybe we have been sold a bill of goods. All right, buddy, hit me with
I got,
a couple of
I got
quick
a
hits.
couple quick hits for you. Number one, just interesting stat. Mondani was plus 40 on men.
Ooh,
So the left, the GOP and the progressives, so worried about like not being able to get the male vote. Well, somehow he got it in New York City pretty aggressively. But just to put a bow on the story I've been talking about for the last 72 hours, sandwich guy in Washington, D.C., the jury deliberated and handed the slip to the foreman, and he was deemed not guilty of deadly assault by Hoagie in the great province or
assault
whatever
with
you
a
call it
deadly
of Washington, D.C. So I guess justice does prevail every so often, and an embarrassing and waste of federal resources comes to a close.
right. So if the sandwich don't split, you must have
Just
quit.
to quit. Apparently it's like it was 12-0 or 6-0. It was a unanimous vote from the jury. Decided that the splatter of mustard on the
Mustard splatter.
bulletproof vest was not quite a deadly force.
Well, can you imagine the AUSA that had to go in there and argue that case?
Man,
Can you fucking imagine?
man, that whoever that is should have their resume going. You got to find a job in the
Oh,
private. You got to find another job.
oh, I would have been having my gizzard removed on trial day. Yeah, I've come down with a painful gizzard, and I'm not going to be able to come to work today. I'm in the hospital.
What
It's
do you
going to
got
be.
for me? What do you got for me?
Oh gosh, I should have written it down. I got so many here. First of all, it was Marjorie Taylor Greene who just irked me. Again, the legacy media on my last nerve, and I was also thinking that with the whole school situation, and the affordability issue, how the quality of education is going to continue to decline. So we got to talk about that coming up. But the big deal here in Georgia, and people are still talking about it, is these two seats that were flipped on the Public Service Commission. I mentioned it briefly yesterday, but those are the people who can set the rates, right, that we have to pay on our utility bills. And when you think about a place like Georgia where you have so many people who need assistance just to pay their utility bills, now we know why, right? Because there are people on the board, and doing the regulating who could give a damn that you can't afford to pay. And and so it's nice to see that there were so many messages sent um, in every aspect of American life, whether it was city council, whether it was a state senate seat. People are now starting to wake up to the fact that all
Oh,
these races matter.
school board seats, those Moms for Liberty fucking ban the books, you know,
People, yep,
Central
nut
Florida
jobs,
fucking wackos that tried to spread out across the country got their clocks cleaned.
demolished.
Yeah,
Yes,
they got crushed because people woke up to the fact that if you don't show up and vote for these local
right.
elections, you can get some shit happening right in your neighborhood that
Just like that.
you don't agree with just by being lazy and not getting
Right.
off your ass once a year.
Right. And so we've got to think about how long it's going to take to correct the damage that was done, by these Looney Tunes like Moms for Liberty.
Yeah, it's gonna take
But
several cycles. I mean,
yeah,
it's
yeah. And it's going to take several cycles of people staying woke. Am I not supposed to say woke in the during the Trump
I don't know.
regime?
I don't
They
think.
are saying
I
woke,
think
woke, woke.
Trump's so. I think Trump's so. Tomorrow we'll talk about that great photo of Trump in the Oval Office with the guy fucking falling down and passed out behind him, and he's just staring at the camera, not giving a shit that guy may be dead right next to him. That was a classic lack of empathy, not being woke photo
He's not
of Donald
that.
Trump. I'm woke
Yeah.
white guy. I think the white community needs to take the word woke back and re-own it, and proudly wear that jargon.
That moniker, absolutely, because you know what? It's not a bad thing. I don't care how Republicans try to frame it. It ain't a bad thing to know what's going on around you and in your community, because that's the only way you can make it better and leave it better than when you found it. Is if you know what's actually going on around you. All right, Brody. Good stuff, man.
All
I
right,
will
Mark.
see you
Always a
tomorrow.
pleasure. I'll talk
Yes,
to you
sir.
tomorrow.
Stay loud and proud.
All right.
Peace.
L'chaim.